Welcome to the 902 podcast, the official podcast of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm Captain John Vik, and I want to thank you for tuning in. This podcast will give you an inside look at LSO with topics and guests to discuss public safety issues impacting Lancaster County. Be sure to subscribe for highlights on news, cases, and the people working for you at LSO. You can also follow us across social media by searching for @LSO Nebraska. That's @LSO Nebraska on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Well, it is podcast day here in the 902 studios, and we are lucky to have a couple of guests with us. We still have Sheriff Terry Wagner with us. Thanks for being here, Sheriff.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Chief Deputy Ben Houchin.
Good afternoon. It's a nice Friday.
It definitely is. I'm John Vik. I'm captain here at the Sheriff's Office, and our guests in the studio are here for Women's History Month. So today we have Sara Sump and Amanda Gress with us in studio.
Hello. Hello.
Thanks for coming. Really want to just talk to you guys about women that are here at LSO and kind of the roles that they play and how important that they are to us. But before we do that, I want to give you guys a chance just to introduce yourself. Sara, you want to go first?
I would love to go first. So, hi, Sara Sump. I have been with the office since 2019 as our administrative services officer. Before that, I worked for the state at the Department of Corrections. I reign from the great state of Iowa, but now call Lincoln, Nebraska home. Love it here.
My name is Amanda Gress, and I am a Lincoln native. I originally graduated Southeast High School and currently work, this is my 15th year at LSO, overall 19 years in law enforcement.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We get asked a lot of questions when we're out and about doing recruiting events and things like that. You know, what we have for roles here at the Sheriff's Office. Are there any divisions here that we don't have women in roles that you guys are aware of?
No, I don't think so. I think there's somebody, a woman in every division, actually.
So how much of our actual staff is made up of women here at LSO?
So about 12% of commissioned staff. There's 74% of civilian staff, 12% in our security guards division. So quite a few. Awesome.
So, you know, we've looked at our history book and preparing for this episode a little bit, gone back to try and figure out what some of the roles were over the years, because they've certainly changed since.
Yes, they have.
From where we're at today, from where we got started in 1861. So, Sheriff, we hear sometimes about matrons and things like that. Where did that ever get started?
You know, if you think back to Marshal Dillon, they didn't have any women working in the jail, or, you know, Festus was as close as they had. And so if you look at our history book, and from what I know of our office, Sheriff Merle Karnopp lived above the jail. And it was situated on the corner here of 9th and K. Jail was on the first floor and like a garden level, and the sheriff lived upstairs. Mrs. Karnopp, Gertrude Karnopp, cooked for the inmates and did their laundry. And when they had a female prisoner that needed to go to court, she escorted them. So you'll see a lot of pictures of Charlie Starkweather and Caril and Fugate, and usually Sheriff Karnopp had Charlie in tow, and Mrs. Karnopp was always with Caril and Fugate. So, yeah, they served a very important role before there were women in law enforcement. So
am I hearing that right, that sheriffs and their families actually used to live kind of on site at the jail or at the courthouse?
Yes. You know, Merle's son, Dennis, used to say how, you know, he lived above the jail, and Charlie Starkweather lived across on the east side of 10th Street. And so Charlie was at the sheriff's quarters on several occasions playing with their son, Dennis.
Really?
So it was their home. There are still, up until a few years ago, there were still sheriffs in Nebraska that lived above or next to the jail, and then they took care of the jail. Sometimes their wives would answer the radio, take care of female prisoners, kind of take care of all that, those support functions.
So, like you said, in the days before we had as many women staff as we have now, sometimes they were family members, but sometimes they had actual employee roles before we had our first deputy. Is that?
That's correct. You'll see a lot of the photos around the sheriff's office. A lot of the clerical staff were female, obviously, but we had matrons. They might be have a clerical function as a primary job function, and then when we had a female prisoner, which weren't that many then, they would be the ones escorting females to court.
So, Sarah, you and I talked about this a little bit. When did we actually get our first female deputy at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office?
So our first female deputy was Miss Margaret Miller, and she was hired in 1961 was the first time we had a female deputy. And it sounds like her main role was to be a dispatcher at the time.
So we're looking at a picture of Margaret Miller, and it's actually one that's on display in one of our historical display cases here. But how would you describe, Amanda, their uniform from then to today?
Well, it's a long dress of sorts almost. I don't know how you would really function now in that. You can't really run in that, but
right.
Yeah, definitely more of like a suit, coat, dress kind of.
Yeah.
It looks like she's got high heels on.
It
Wouldn't be
does,
very
yeah.
good
I
at a
was gonna
foot
say
pursuit
that,
doing
yeah.
that.
Well, and
I mean,
you look at her hat compared to what the headgear for men were. I mean, it was sort of like if you look at the military in the 40s, women's headgear was much different than men's headgear,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that was a little bit kind of standard for the culture at the time in the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Well, you'll notice in that photograph that Margaret's not armed.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we had women on patrol until early 70s.
Okay. So
I think Marjorie Blue was the first deputy that wore trousers, wore a gun belt, and so we all wore the same thing, and then she actually worked patrol.
So Amanda, that's obviously a lot different than when you and I started. We started around the same time.
Yes.
So how would you contrast that to your experience when you started?
I mean, just even since I started back in 2004, like the uniforms are different all around. So like we're going to the more cargo pant type thing to be more tactful and helpful when you're carrying all the stuff that you need to. And I just evolving every day, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, we want to learn a little bit more about you and what you do here at the Sheriff's Office. So Amanda, do you want to start? What drew you to work for LSO?
So I originally was working at a different agency, and I happened to work quite a bit with other LSO deputies at the other agency that I was at. And I just really liked the people at LSO. And I just liked the camaraderie that they had every time I would work with them. So that's what drew me to LSO.
Awesome. Sarah, how about you?
So I would be a little different coming from the administration side of the sheriff's office. So I was, like I said, working at the state, and a friend of mine was looking for jobs. I wasn't even looking for a job, and came across this and said, this really looks like something that would be great for you. And I thought, well, I'll throw my hat in it. And, at first I was like, oh, whatever. And once I got here, though, and interviewed and met some people, I just loved the culture and environment that was here. So that's really what kind of set it off for me.
So you talked a little bit about, why you came here and what you do. So tell us a little bit more about what is your job? What are you paid to do at the Sheriff's Office?
So my main role would be I oversee our accounting division. I do our budget and finance. And I also have an accounting specialist that's underneath me that takes care of a lot of our bill paying. But I work closely with our civil specialist, processing the legal fees that are mandated through our lovely state statutes. And then as some roles, my job title is actually super broad, and so I've taken on a few more things here. So I also work with civilian hiring. I work with our website and our social media. and have the best boss in the whole wide world.
I cannot agree more than that she does have one of the greatest bosses. Yes. On that. Hey, and one of the things I think was really cool is when she started to get involved into our social media, it has taken off. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it's gone for you since you've done that?
Sure. So in my personal life, I run a business through social media, so I kind of have some knowledge and expertise in that. And so it's really just about getting out there and showing who we are and humanizing the badge. It's a bit of a challenge because there is some security issues, and officer safety is one of our biggest things. But we really like to show you guys what's happening and what we're doing, and what a day kind of in the life of LSO is. Because a lot of it's a mystery. Before I came here, I just thought, oh, there's people out on the road driving around handing out speeding tickets. But wow, we do a lot more than that. And so I really like people to see that and kind of know what we do. And at the end of the day, we're responsible to the taxpayers. So I kind of like you guys to know what your money's going for. So yeah, that's kind of, we like to get out there, do some videos, do some live streams. It's been a fun, challenging learning curve that I think we're doing pretty good at. So it's been fun.
Yeah, so sometimes if you're interacting with us on social media, so shameless plug at LSO Nebraska, you find us on Facebook,
Twitter, Instagram,
and YouTube.
A lot of times. And now the 902 podcast.
Yes, the 902 podcast as well. So Sara will sometimes be answering messages on Facebook Messenger, things like that. You might also, if Chief Deputy Houchin or Sheriff Wagner are on camera, a lot of times Sara is the one behind the camera in those circumstances. So
yes,
appreciate everything that you're doing.
She critiques me daily on things.
Somebody's got to keep you guys in line.
So Amanda, what do you do at LSO? What's your position, and tell us a little bit about what you're paid to do here.
So my current position is the Education and Personnel Deputy. So I help with hiring. I help with what we call a mini academy. Basically, when we hire new deputies, we put them through a mini academy. If they're already certified, they go straight to the mini academy before they go out into the field training program to be on the road with other deputies. And then if they're going off to the Grand Island to become certified, once they get back from Grand Island, I just kind of go over our policies, our procedures, different ways we write reports, things like that. I also help with training. So making sure all of our deputies per LB 51 have everything that they need for the year for training hours, qualifying for handgun, anything that they need. I also make sure that they're all outfitted. So anything that they could possibly need, I make sure that they get. So uniform stuff, just anything that they would possibly need.
Awesome. And I'm lucky enough to have Amanda working with me in my division. So thank you for all that you do. But before you did that, you probably get the same reaction out of your kids that I do when I put on a uniform. They go, well, you're a cop?
Yes.
Sometimes they forget that when we're upstairs working in an administrative role. But before you did what you're doing now.
So I worked patrol, I worked courts division, I worked transports, and then I was a school resource officer for 6 years. So I've been kind of all over the gamut here.
What school were you at?
I was at Waverly.
That kind of brings us into what are some of the issues that you're most passionate about when it comes to work at LSO?
So my main concern is just employee wellness. So not just officer wellness, but employee wellness for our civilian staff and our certified staff. I think wellness in general is incredibly important. I think the deputies especially and civilian staff too, if they hear some of the calls come out or they see some of the reports that come out or have to type up some of the reports that come out on maybe traumatic incidences, like I want to make sure that everybody's good and they don't have any issues or they don't need anything. Yeah. So that's what I'm very passionate about is officer wellness and wellness in general for our staff.
Well, and Sheriff and Chief, I appreciate you being as receptive as you've been to some of the things that we're trying wellness-wise. I know that's something that's definitely affected our profession. Not something that we're always great at as an industry about, reaching out for mental health assistance and things like that sometimes. But what are your thoughts on wellness when it comes to LSO?
You look at, recently in 2020, Troy Bailey, Deputy Sheriff, passed away from a heart attack, and that was ruled to be a line of duty death. And you look at the 4 employees we've had who have died in the line of duty, and 3 of those have been heart issues. So heart issues are a huge, they're just very prevalent in law enforcement. The average life expectancy of a law enforcement officer is about 56 years, I think. So, heart problems are a huge issue. It's, critically important that we make those services available to our employees to keep them healthy and keep them going.
Yep. Chief, thoughts on the wellness side?
When I started back in '93, you didn't talk about this stuff. You didn't have wellness. It kind of came off as you're being weak if you had to go and get help. And I think as a profession, we have really dropped the ball on that. And I'm really glad that we are picking that up and going at it, because we're way more likely to kill ourselves than we are to get killed by a felon. And so that's sad. And we need to make sure that we're looking at that. Thank God here we have not had that. And I think we're working and keeping that. And we also do a lot of our physical fitness. We have a nice weight room and treadmills and things. And with the sworn, if they have time, they can work out for 30 minutes on duty. And I think that's a big thing.
So,
Absolutely.
Amanda, what does that actually look like on a functional level? I know you're part of the critical incident stress management team.
Yes.
Can you talk about what role that plays at LSO?
So anytime that a deputy or anybody gets involved in a critical incident, they just need to contact their supervisor, and their supervisor lets us know. There's 2 of us here at the sheriff's office that are on the critical incident stress management team of Nebraska, and we coordinate with them and set up a debriefing so that way we can all talk about it. And I think it's very important, especially on very traumatic incidences. Yes, it's very tragic, obviously, for everybody involved, whether it's the family, friends, deputies, firefighters, anybody that responds to that incident. It's incredibly stressful and it's challenging, and we get dispatched to it constantly. So for the critical incident stress management team, it's a good way for people to talk about it, and you're all there to talk about it. So it's not like, oh, I shouldn't say this or I shouldn't say that. It's what's bothering you. And then if they get to a point where that's just not enough, then we can help refer them to somebody else to talk to.
What do you consider a critical incident? Just for the listening audience's edification.
Yeah, I mean, a critical incident can be anything. If a deputy goes to a death that was either a car accident or a suicide or a murder or anything, an accidental death, it could be something that a lot of them seem to be motor vehicle accidents involving children or families, multiple deaths in one time. So we don't really have it has to be like this bad of an incident. It's just, if somebody is struggling at all, they just need to contact their supervisor. So I think that's important for people to know.
I always worried about with kids, if a deputy has a child close to that same age, and then you have something traumatic happen to a child close to that too. And I think at that point they start to put their own child in that position and think, and I think that's one of the worst things that can happen to a
Absolutely.
deputy.
I think many of us, you get off work at 2:00 in the morning and you go home, your children are little, and maybe you've had one of those calls, and you go in and stick your hand in front of your child's nose just to make sure they're still breathing, and then things are good, you can go to bed. And so I think we've all done that.
Absolutely.
Well,
I know I have.
Yeah, and you and I have talked too. I mean, when you start, a lot of us start this profession when we're young, before we're married or have kids or anything like that. And sometimes something that maybe wouldn't have really been that stressful of an event, relatively speaking, when your situation changes and maybe you have kids or your family situation changes, that event can play out very differently.
Absolutely.
Than it did before. So I really appreciate you trying to meet people where they're at, and what's hard to deal with for some might not be difficult for others, and sometimes they sneak up on you. So we've got to be proactive.
Yeah, it could be one event, or it could be multiple events over a long period of time.
Yeah, cumulative.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I think that could get some folks too, and then a small thing happens and it goes downhill for them.
If you look back on days gone by, and I'll take you down memory lane, but an LAPD officer was an author, and he wrote several books about his experiences with LAPD, and one of them they would have choir practice after work, almost like you're describing with a critical stress debriefing incident, only these all involved alcohol, and bad things happened. And so it was not only were they dealing with the stress in the wrong way, the alcohol effects were causing them problems both personally and professionally. And so, it was a different way of dealing with stress back then to what we're doing now. It's a world of difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Sara, how about you? What things are you passionate about working in public safety and in law enforcement?
So I think one thing I want to keep up here, and it kind of goes in line with that, is keeping a positive culture here and keeping everyone successful and happy in what they're doing. A couple years ago, we did a culture survey just to kind of gauge where our employees are, what keeps them here, what keeps them ticking, and then things that we can look to improve on, because we don't know if we don't know. So I just really, overall wellness, and I think bridging the gap between civilians and sworn staff is probably one of my other differences, because it is two different worlds, and we try to understand and we try to be as supportive as we can be to our sworn counterparts, but there's just some things we won't understand, and vice versa. So really just keeping that positive environment here, because they see some crazy things out in the field. So
yeah, so about 25% or so of our staff are civilian or support staff.
Yes.
And the others are commissioned. So talk a little bit about the how do you see some of those differences at work?
So a big one, because the majority of our civilians work Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. And so we just don't get those interactions with people that are here working the holidays, working the weekends. And so it's just, you don't know each other. It's not a typical work environment where you all come to an office and there's a break room where you have lunch or dinner or whatever. And so like an example, one thing we do around the holidays is we do a big food fest. And so we try to have people bring in food and share a meal together, because that's always one thing that bonds people. And so that's one thing. And the other thing is, most of our civilian positions are more clerical positions. They're, budget finance, there are records, they're the people that are at the front greeting people. And so it's just a different scale or type of work field.
Well, the one thing though, the guys out and gals who are out on the field couldn't do their jobs without you guys doing that in the back. And it's very important. And it may not get all the glamour, but we certainly here at the Sheriff's Office couldn't operate without them being there doing their jobs.
So Sara, again, being here for Women's History Month, we want to just get perspectives on how things work at LSO and the contributions that women make. Talk to us about some of the things that we're maybe still working on here for women at LSO. Do we still have work to do? How would you rate your experience here?
Yeah. So, yes, I think there's still some work to do. I was kind of thinking about things, and I think one thing that I would love to see is more women in leadership. And I know it takes the right person to be in leadership. It's not meant for everybody, but we've never had a female captain, and I would love to see a female captain. I would say female sheriff or chief deputy, but there's only one at a time. So at least for our captains we have.
But we kind of, although you're not a captain because you're in a civilian position, you do sit on what we would consider our command staff. So, you are a part of our discussions and meetings, and I think it's nice to have your perspective, both as a woman and also as a member of that civilian and support staff, because you're able to see things maybe from a perspective that we're not always looking at some of our operations through. Yeah,
that's very true. And whether we like it or not, we just think differently, we tick differently. And so sometimes it's a good way to give different perspective to things. And so that's why I would love to see, I'll say then, a sworn member of our staff being on a leadership role would be one goal I would love. But, here at the county, our pay is all the same. We don't have any of those issues. Benefits are all the same. It's really just getting the right person that wants to move up and grow.
Yeah. Amanda, how about you? Thoughts on that?
No, I think the sheriff's office does a good job. I wish more women would apply for law enforcement positions. Yeah. It seems lately the last few hiring processes, we've only had one. Mm-hmm. So I would just love more females to get involved in law enforcement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's always something that we've been trying to work on, Sheriff, as far as just getting that representation within our deputy ranks. And we're certainly not alone in that, nationally.
I know, and I think rural law enforcement is a little more intimidating to a lot of people, women included, because they're out there all by themselves, a long way from a backup, 3 o'clock in the morning, not a street light in sight, and it can be a little bit intimidating. And so it really isn't much different than urban policing, is it, Amanda? And I think, the women that we've had here that can kind of get over that intimidation factor do very well. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'd love to see more female applicants.
Yeah, I would love that.
So what do you love most about what you do at LSO?
Well, my job, I guess, I just love the people. Like, I get to interact more with everyone in the agency now. Now that my role is, I have everything they need, so they come to me if they need something. So I get to see a lot more deputies, regardless if they're night shift, second shift, day shift, doesn't matter. So I just love the people of LSO. Everybody gets along really well, I feel like, and I feel like the camaraderie is still a little different from it was back in the day, but I still feel like it's still there. So the people, I like the people.
Awesome. Sara, how about you? What keeps you coming back?
I would say the people, yes, are really what makes this place pretty awesome. And it's what keeps you coming here. I think we have a great mission. We work hard. We have fun at what we do. And so it's just an awesome place to work.
Awesome. Sheriff, Chief, any other thoughts?
It's our boss, and that's not me. It's the people we work for. People really do respect sheriff's deputies in the rural areas. They realize tough job. I know I've taken reports before from people that live in the county and said, "Well, I'm sorry to bother you." See, you're not bothering us. This is what we're here to do, is to find out who stole the tractor out of your battery, or the battery out of your tractor. But people in the county, when you drive around, you got to have that finger up there on the steering wheel and wave back at them, or they'll think you're mad at them. So it's a kind of a different policing atmosphere. People really do appreciate us, and in turn, it really is enjoyable for us to serve them.
Yep. Chief, any other thoughts?
I know a lot of times people ask, well, what is it like to have a female working, or vice versa on that? The great thing about the female deputies that I've worked with all the time, they were just as great. They could do the job just as well as the man could. And there's been some of them that we went into some very bad situations, and they were right there with you. They did their job and did everything they did. So it's not a man-woman job. It's who wants to come and be a law enforcement officer. It doesn't matter what sex you are, what race you are, or anything like that. Come here, be a good person, do the right things, treat people fairly, no matter who you are, and you will work out here great.
Yeah, well said. Well, I just really appreciate both of you being here and all the work that you do every day, day in and day out, but also just for joining us today and giving us a little bit of your perspective on work at LSO. So thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, that's going to take all of our time today for the 902 podcast. We want to thank everybody for listening in. Just a reminder that you can find out information about employment opportunities at the Sheriff's Office by going to joinlso.com. And you can also follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube by looking for @LSO Nebraska, and come and find us and interact with us there. That's all the time that we have for today. Thanks for listening to the 902 podcast.
If you want a challenging career, a career where you can make a difference in your life, your family's life, and the lives of those in your community, come and join the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. To learn more or to apply, Visit us online at www.joinlso.com.